and welcome to Ask Me Anything About Politics. My name is Jarrett, and I am available for you to ask all of your questions about politics. I know that politics can be really intimidating when you're first trying to learn about it. I know that politics is particularly weird these days with all of the misinformation and propaganda that is out there in abundance. So, where can you go to ask all your questions and figure out what's actually going on in the country and in the government? Well, you can come right here and ask all of your questions. Ask any of the questions that you like. What's up, Triska? Good to see you again. And I will do my best to give you a great answer. There will be no fighting here. There's no roasting. There's no debating. There's no judgment. It is just going to be good faith answers to all of your good faith questions. So let's see here, Rachel. What's up? Crazy Monsoon says, "Are you disappointed the Democrats caving last night?" Crazy Monsoon. Let's get right into it. I want to address this in a couple of different ways. Number one, I want to talk about how it's not the Democrats caving. There are a handful of Senate Democrats who made a decision that this was the move. And I don't know if it's fair to call that caving. We all, are so quick to look at anything that the Democrats do in a negative light. This is just more evidence of them being weak and feckless and, easy to dog walk. And I just don't buy that narrative at all. That's number one. Number two is that I refuse to get angrier at Democrats for doing things that I don't agree with than Republicans, for, you know, doing the shitty thing. Let me rephrase that. I refuse to get angrier at Democrats for fighting Republicans not being able to stop them from hurting Americans as much as they want, than I do get than angry that I get at Republicans for hurting Americans. So that's number two. Number three is I don't know if I don't know how else this shutdown was going to end besides Democrats coming to some sort of a deal because the Republican Party will just let America suffer. Like they just do not give a shit about that. And so, we've got holidays coming up and the pain was going to be real. And there's some very real consequences to continuing a government shutdown that, you know, if you're the Republican Party and you don't really give a shit about people suffering, and in fact, you probably would prefer people to suffer more because then maybe they get violent, and then maybe you can send the Marines in and continue with your fascist takeover of America. There's no negotiating from that position. So yeah, I kind of fall on the side of things that says that they probably should not have signed this deal. But I also think that we need to recognize that just because somebody does something that you disagree with does not mean that they are 100% wrong. And, maybe they just had a different calculus than you. Maybe they know things that you don't know. So, yeah, that's my 25-cent take on Democrats trying to end the government shutdown. Bit Nevo says, "Will Johnson finally confirm Grijalva now?" So I saw some reporting that said that if he delays until another special election that's happening in December, then he will potentially have another vote to keep the discharge petition from passing entirely. And so, is there, will ending the shutdown and putting enough pressure on Mike Johnson finally seat this Arizona representative, before December? I think this is a dude without any kind of scruples or, moral foundation. So I don't view him. This is going to be his version of McConnell holding open a Supreme Court seat for like over a year. Yeah, I don't think that the shutdown will have any effect. If that is in fact his goal, is to is to delay until that one special election, then I don't think so. But if if for some reason that is not the case, then potentially he could be forced to seat her after the shutdown is over. Tyler Santucci says, "Do you think any of the shutdown is good?" There's good things about it and there's bad things about it. It's like, the people that I disagree with the strongest are the ones who think that it's an easy decision either way, or that there is a clear right decision where the shutdown is concerned in the Democratic Party, because the Democratic Party is doing their best with a fucking Jack high, while the Republican Party has been getting fucking full houses for a long time. Ethan Lozel says, "Will it be a 2028 election?" So Donald Trump and the Republican Party do not get to decide whether or not we have a 2028 election. We get to decide if we have a 2028 election. And so if people like you and me do the work, Ethan, of making sure that there is a 28 election, then there will be a 28 election. Pimping It Free says, "Did spreading propaganda lead to the reason Charlie Kirk got?" Did propaganda lead to Charlie Kirk getting assassinated? I mean, I don't think there's a specific piece of propaganda or a specific narrative. But I do think that propaganda and misinformation is partially responsible for the political climate that we are living in today, where people are being driven to extremes, and uh, you know, the male loneliness epidemic is further radicalizing young men to take drastic actions that are, terrible. I suppose an argument could be made for that, but I don't know if I would put it as simply as that. Jimmy Gormley says, "No, if it's someone doesn't like what you're saying, they act on it harmfully." I don't know if I agree with you or disagree with you, Jimmy. Sharkspear says, "We could 100% vote Democrat in 28, and they'd all say, let the besties go free." I don't agree with that at all, Sharkspear. The Democratic Party is better than the Republican Party, and so I do not believe that that is a thing that would happen. S.E. Morgan says, "Are the Dems taco also?" I don't think so. This shutdown, people forget that the shutdown is not a obvious win for the Democratic Party. Americans are being hurt by that. And so, as the only party that really gives a shit if, number one, the government works, and number two, people suffer, there really was no good way out of this for the Democratic Party. So yeah, I don't know if this was the right move or not. I personally don't think that it is the right move, but I think that we all need to have the humility of recognizing that, number one, we might be wrong, and number two, there might be information that we do not have. Right. Dan Blackhorse says the T in taco stands for Trump, so no, that is accurate and hilarious. My guy Dan does not miss. All right, Adam says, "Ironic how the shutdown stopped after the elections, weeks of blaming Republicans at cost of the people." I don't know if it's ironic, and I don't know if it has anything to do with Democrats winning on Tuesday, or if it just has to do with the holidays coming up and the potential for strife, being exponentially raised. S.E. Morgan says, "I think the only leverage the Democrats have was keeping the government closed." Potentially, but the Republican Party was also getting a lot from the government being closed. So, yeah, I mean, again, I think we're talking about a close game. I think we're talking about a difference of 1 or 2 percentage points. And again, I personally think that the government shutdown was the move. I think that continuing the shutdown is the move. But I think you can make a strong argument that it is better for Democrats to end the shutdown at this point. Right. Mick Spike says, "Why didn't they wait until the court decision came on Snap?" Um, Sharkspear says, "Nope, the Democrats caved." Sharkspear, here's the thing. I am exactly as hostile towards people who insist that they know exactly what's going on in DC as I am towards MAGA people trying to troll in my live stream. So even though we probably agree on a lot of issues, Sharkspear, unless you start asking questions, I'm gonna boot you because you're extremely confident nope Democrats and then in all caps caved, I think is uh is wrong, and I believe it is also toxic to the culture. So there's your warning, Sharkspear. And whether or not I agree with you that Schumer needs to go, I agree with you that Schumer needs to go. You can't be saying shit like what you just said above. Jacoby says, "What's the main reason for the shutdown? Thought it was a disagreement about healthcare reimbursements. It was, but there are other issues with the way that Republicans are running the government that the Democratic Party was kind of taking aim at. And so a lot of what Democrats got out of the negotiation had to do with some of those other, you know, fringe elements, like making sure that various agencies don't get gutted, employees don't get fired, things like that. Pally says the government gets shut down. We got people starving, but Israel always gets its money. Well, the Democratic Party is voting to stop sending Israel money and weapons. So if you don't like the fact that Israel gets money when Americans starve, then you should vote for the Democratic Party. Brad Smith says Democrats should have never shut down the government. Well, Brad, the Democrats didn't shut down the government. They just refused to fund Donald Trump's fascist government. And here we go. We got a Brad Smith here. We got a Brad Smith fella who thinks that even shutting down the government was a bad move. So, let's all fucking take a chill pill and recognize that this is a complicated issue as opposed to, an obvious either slam dunk or fumble on whoever's part. Pally says, we have a lot of dual citizenship American Zionists that have Israel before America while they live. Pally, so here's the thing, my guy. I think that there's a lot of very substantive criticism that you can make about the Israeli government, about AIPAC, and about certain politicians acquiescing to both the Netanyahu government and AIPAC. But I find people that are laser focused on Israel as the one issue to be a little anti-Semitic coded. So while I agree with you, Netanyahu, piece of shit, AIPAC, toxic lobbying organization, the American government does not run or get their marching orders from Israel directly. There are other massive issues, and again, the Democratic Party is the only one standing up to Israel even a little bit. So, alrighty. Adam says, doesn't subsidizing healthcare greatly mean more money in the corrupt insurance companies' pockets? So, Adam, so long as we have a private insurance industry and not universal health care or Medicare for all or a public option, anything that you do to try to address inequities or issues with American healthcare is going to put money into the pockets of insurance companies. Like, they are entrenched in the system. And so I would love for you to show me the policy that takes the American insurance companies out of things, that isn't universal health care. Like, where I stand on this. Like, I want Americans to have universal health care or a public option, or just do something to make what we have now cheaper and easier for the American people, even if it means putting more money in insurance companies' pockets. Kyobi says, why are Trumpers so impervious to any information that's delivered anywhere? So, Kyobi, it's not just Trumpers that are like that. Every human being, it is very difficult to change their mind, even in the face of contrary evidence. We have done studies on this, psychological studies on this. You can put as much data in front of somebody as you like. It will just entrench them further in their priors. And so while I am happy to be, somebody who generally tries to challenge their pre-existing beliefs, as often as I possibly can, I can't pretend that me and the other people in my party are completely immune from this, from this, I guess recalcitrance. I think I'm using that word correctly. Our immovability. Alrighty. John Bradley says, the reality is without U.S. support, Israel would experience G-side from all the other Islamic states. I don't know if that's true, actually, anymore, John Bradley. I think that the support that we have given them for so long has created a power center in that region centered in Israel. I could be wrong about that, but it is my belief that Israel is plenty strong and able to defend themselves at this point in time. Kyobi says, "Thank you, amazing response. It's just my parents, man. They're so freaking lost." I understand that, Kyobi. And here's the thing: if you want to do work to help the country right now, you can, try to reach your parents. As their child, you definitely have more leverage in convincing them than somebody like me, who they don't even fucking know. But you might also want to consider that non-voters or squishy Republican voters or centrist independents, whatever, might be easier to convince than your parents. And so just by crunching the numbers, maybe that's a more productive place for your energy. Now, if my parents were MAGA, then I would be incentivized to switch them to make them not MAGA, not only because I want to get those 2 votes away from the Republican Party, but just because they're my parents and I love them and I don't want them to be stuck in a cult. So, as you weigh that calculus, I would encourage you to check out a book called The Persuaders by an author named Anand Giridharadas. The link to that book is in my Discord. Link is in my bio, so you don't have to remember that name or write it down or anything. All you got to do is join the Discord now or when the live stream is over, and then that is a book that is all about persuasion. It is all about convincing even people that are deeply entrenched in MAGA worlds to not be. All right, Mel says, "Do you follow Johnny Palmedesa at all?" I don't even know who that is. Kimberlina says, "Thoughts on OAN? My dad is convinced it's bipartisan source." Oh no, OAN is not a bipartisan source. It is a far right-wing news channel. Patrick Kelly says, "Is Newsom the front runner for the Democrats in 28? Who would you like to see step up?" So Patrick Kelly, I always punt on 28. I don't really care who runs. I have not picked a candidate to support in the primary. I'm just trying to get everybody laser focused on the midterms, because the midterms is where we need all of our focus. We need to win the midterms, and by large margins, we need to win the midterms. Otherwise, there is going to be a lot more work that citizens like you and me are going to have to do to avoid the worst possible scenarios. Larry Hall says, "Was it a mistake for the Democrats to give in on the shutdown?" So Larry Hall, I don't know if what 8 members of the Democratic Party have agreed to is good or bad. My personal belief is that Democrats were doing really good work in keeping the government shut down and calling America's attention to what the Republican Party was doing. But it is a very complicated issue. Deciding to not sign on to funding the government was a difficult choice. Letting it stay shut down for as long as it's been shut down was a difficult choice. Deciding to reopen the government with the Republican Party is also a difficult choice. And so, I think we should all have the humility to recognize that we don't know if this was the right move or not. And calling it Democrats caving is like part of that narrative that helps the Republican Party out, when it's not caving. It's a hard choice. It's a difficult choice. They're doing their best they can with what they have. Shork says, "I feel like if Fetterman supports it, then it's probably the wrong choice." I generally agree with that, Shork. And again, if I were that, I would not have done that. But I also think we all need the humility to recognize that just because you don't think it's the move does not mean that it is not the move. Chat says cave. Nick says, "LOL, it's a cave." All right, my fucking Republican bot trolls who are just trying to make the Democratic Party look bad. Let's see here. Ad Rish here says, "What do you think of Zoran asking for money after winning?" Normally, when politicians ask for money after they win campaigns, they are asking for their transition team, which is very difficult to do a transition into government. Normally, all they do is they ask just their big money donors. But because Zoran has funded his campaign with small money donors, he then had to ask the small money donors to fund his transition. It is perfectly normal. It is actually further evidence of Mamdani being a good politician who does not take money from special interests, large corporations, billionaires, etc. Fog War Production says, LOL, it's a cave. Smeagol after arriving in the Misty Mountain. That's really funny, Fog War Productions. Ralph Wiggum's alter ego says, Trump balanced the budget his first day in office. That is a lie, Ralph Wiggum's alter ego. Are you doing a bit because Ralph Wiggum kind of like wasn't all there, and so you're saying things that Ralph Wiggum would say? Because if so, it's a funny bit. If that's your real opinion though, then you're just wrong. Renaggio says, what do you think about paying for car insurance at the pump? I've never heard about this policy proposal, Renaggio. So yeah, I got no. Oh, you mean like everybody gets car insurance, but everybody that pays for gas pays for it, like collectively? Yeah, I've never heard about this policy. Podhead says, Dems don't want to see people starving. GOP are perfectly fine with people starving. That is accurate. Ad Rashir says, thanks for clearing it up. Glad to have an educated opinion on it. You're welcome, Ad Rashir. Flamingo says, exactly. Why would anyone think that was bad to not be beholden to the billionaires? Hot damn, Flamingo Mo. Accurate. Shork says, what does it mean that SCOTUS doesn't want to rule on gay marriage? Ooh, yeah, that's actually interesting. I did not predict that at all. I am regularly telling people that political predictions are complete and utter nonsense. And so, where I was saying that I thought it would probably go back to the states the way that they did with the Dobbs decision, I am stunned that they did not do that. So, yeah, my guess is that the Supreme Court is, capable of being influenced by political wins, the same way that they're influenced by billionaire donor money and shit. And so I think that they, seeing how well the Democrats did this past Tuesday, probably is giving them pause and thinking like, how much damage can we do to progressive ideologies that are rampant in this country without getting so fucked in the midterms in 28 that either we get impeached or seats are added to the Supreme Court and our voices then become nullified. Right. Era Abraham says progressive? Question mark. Yeah, the American people are more progressive than they think they are. And I have a lot of evidence to back that up, Eru. So if you would like me to get into that, I will. But a lot of the hemming and hawing about, are Democrats too far to the left? Are they too far to the right? Is America too racist or misogynistic to elect somebody who's not a straight white man? Why is universal health care so unpopular as a policy? I feel like a lot of that can be explained away, but the foundation of the American populace, I do believe, hold progressive values. They've just been lied to about what those values are. You know what I mean? Ralph Wiggum says, Trump and Putin kiss like this. Okay, so it is a bit. It is a bit, Ralph Wiggum. And I appreciate you being here. Renaggio says, we have Levi's here. Other countries will try to buy you jeans on vacation. What a weird thing to say. North Carolina Nature Gal says, please let me know what you think of the Working Families Party. I love the Working Families Party. The Working Families Party is the only independent party that is doing things the right way. They are trying to build national support and build an infrastructure to actually compete with the two ascendant political parties. And they are not running presidential candidates to be spoilers against the Democratic Party the way that the fucking Green Party is, the way that fucking, what's her name, Jill Stein is. So yeah, I fucking love the Working Families Party, and I hope that they achieve their goals of being competitive on the national level. Strangleton says, how would you address the influence of AIPAC? The same way that I would address the influence of everybody who has a lot of money or other extremely powerful lobbying organizations like Heritage and Federalist, which is, number one, I would pass legislation to reverse Citizens United so that we would actually have some campaign finance regulations. And there are other policies that I'm not as familiar with that try to defang the lobbying industry. And so I would just do those things. But again, I have not read up on those specific policies. Charlie says, state your name. No. Strangleton says, how? All right, did that one. Allie, good to see you again. Says, did you hear about Trump wanting to start his own kind of pharmacy? Yeah, it's it's the grift is strong with that dude, you know? It's fucking annoying. Grizzly Bear says, "Are you Stalin's grandson?" No. Let's see here. The Atlas Held says, "Wow, it actually let me write that. It actually let you write what? Because I didn't see anything except for that thing that you just wrote." Alrighty, let's see here. Rando says, "Is a Trump voter not a fan of him anymore at all, but still better than the Democrats?" I don't agree with that at all, Rando. But I also don't like Trump at all. So yeah, what are you not a fan of Trump for, Rando? And why do you think that the things that you dislike about him are still not bad enough as the things that you dislike about the Democratic Party? Thank you, Samuel. It's been a while since I've had good hair. I've gotten one good haircut since I've moved to California, and the guy who gave it to me, he immediately went back to giving me terrible haircuts right afterwards. So, it's a real fucking crapshoot today. It's a real fucking crapshoot with my hair every day. Tyro, good to see you again. Says, "Catch me up on the cave. What are your thoughts? Oh, and how pissed off you are. LOL." Tyro, you fell for it, man. Like, it's the Democrats did not cave, man. This is the whole fucking thing, dude, is that no matter what Democrats do, it's bad and it's wrong. This is the politics, not the politics, the logistics around the government shutdown are complicated. So whether or not they fund the government or not is a difficult decision. I personally don't think that it was the move. I think this is further evidence of Chuck Schumer not really meeting the moment. I would love to see him get primaried. I would love to see a different de facto leader of the Democrats in the Senate. But I cannot say whether or not this was a good move or not, because Americans are suffering right now, and the Republican Party does not give a shit. And so, with everything concerning the shutdown, is a balancing act between messaging to the American people, assisting the American people as the Republican Party tries to inflict more pain on them. Is the government shutdown giving Donald Trump even more power and allowing him to, accelerate his fascist agenda? Like, it's difficult, and I think that it is, what do you call it? I think it's a clear indication of our own unconscious bias against the Democratic Party that we look at them taking a decision that we disagree with and describe it as caving. Moreover, people are saying the Democrats caved as opposed to these 8 Democrats. We love painting the Democrats with the same brush. We love taking anything the Democrats do and taking anything that one Democrat does and interpreting that as the entire party is terrible or the entire party did that thing. I got nothing but love for you, Tyro. But we got to watch out for these fucking unconscious biases that we all have. Muzz King says, "What did Lindsey Graham mean when he said we are killing the right people?" I believe he was talking about the drone strikes or some shit. Maybe bombing in Iran or something. I don't think that he means starving the American people. I know how it seems like that, but I don't think that that's how he intended it. Eru says, "We pay them to make hard decisions. They fucked us over. First DT." Yeah, Eru, we do pay them to make hard decisions, but I don't think that means that they effed us over. They made a hard decision, and just because you disagree with it doesn't mean it's the wrong decision. Right, so let's see here. Beth McDaniel says, "Do another blue wave in 28. No, Beth, do one in 26. We got 26 coming up. We gotta get everybody focused on 26. That's the fucking election, man." Andrew says, "Does this mean that Trump and Republicans can't take credit for reopening the government?" I mean, they will. There's no logic or reason to the things that they try to take credit for or the blame that they try to skirt. They just do whatever they want. Fog War Productions says, "Lindsey Graham is an avatar of everything wrong with the GOP for the past 30 years. Completely agree with that." Alrighty. Coach just put a dick coming, so that's a block. Congratulations. Tyro says, "Wait, so how is this good?" That is a really good question, Tyro. So, from what I know about the agreement, and again, nothing has been set in stone yet. Things are still up in the air. It's still a moving target. But what is potentially good about the Democrats voting to reopen the government? Number one, we are going to be ending the very specific suffering that the Republican Party was inflicting on America by having the government shut down. Government workers, air traffic controllers, flight delays, SNAP benefits, other funding, or firings that the Trump administration was working on are no longer going to be happening. We're going into the holiday season, which means that a lot of this pain that Americans have been suffering under during the shutdown is going to be exponentially greater. Perhaps keeping Americans from that level of suffering is going to keep violence from happening on the street. If violence happens on the street, Donald Trump uses that as an excuse to further militarize the police, to send in ICE, to send in the National Guard, to send in the Marines. Then we are even closer to him declaring martial law, canceling elections, things like that. An argument could be made. Those are just like some of the first things that I thought of, but again, this is not a what do you call it? Obvious good or bad, in my opinion. Let's see here. Does that answer your second question, Tyro, about why the Dems agreed to open it up? Rando says, why do we have to blame other sides? I think we just agree and are very opinionated on stances. So Rando, I appreciate the what do you call it? The thought there, like whenever I'm talking about how shitty the Republican Party is, like I'm never talking about the voters. Like I have no hate for Republican voters or non-voters, but I think that there is a very clear difference between which political party's elected representatives are doing damage to people versus the ones that are trying to help people. And I think the data shows that the Democratic Party is way better than the Republican Party on that issue. But no, it's not about getting voters to fight amongst themselves. So I remember asking you earlier, Rando, about the thing that you liked about Trump above, and it doesn't seem like you answered it, or maybe your answer got deleted. So yeah, I did not see that really. So Sacramento Enjoyer says DSA plans on starting their own party eventually. Do you think they could become a legit third party? So becoming a legit third party that can compete on the national stage without ranked choice voting is like a decades-long process. And so I don't really have any faith that the DSA is going to be able to do that, or also not be a spoiler candidate for the Democratic Party. So I guess I wish them luck. The Working Families Party is doing things the right way, and they are still, 10 years away from becoming viable without ranked choice voting. Righty, used to need more coffee says Representative Tuberville wants to cut disability benefits to veterans, claiming PTSD is curable. That's fucking disgusting, and I hope that everybody who heard that, who lives in Tuberville's district, will work their asses off to get him unelected. Grizzly Bear says, over 3 more years of this glorious administration. Are you being sarcastic, Grizzly Bear? Bongi Steve says, why did USA government allow the Israeli Defense Forces soldiers to get our veterans benefits? Because the Republican Party is in charge of the government right now, and they are getting dog walked by Netanyahu. Rando says, I agree, way too much hate, just disagreements. Don't like Trump anymore because he divides us even more. What don't you like about the Democratic Party, Rando? James says, who here thinks Trump should be in prison? I do, and I think most of the people here probably do also. Kimberlina says, think it's convenient 2 of the 5 are not seeking re-election, 2 are in 2030. I think that is intentional. That is a move that Schumer does, so that the Democrats that are I think Schumer recognizes that the Democratic base wants the government to stay shut down. They want to play a hardball against the Republican Party. And so that is another one of the things that Schumer is calculating here in, arranging for the end of the government shutdown. So yeah, I think that we should be primarying all of those Democrats. I think we should be primarying Chuck Schumer. But again, this doesn't mean that this is a simple issue. This doesn't mean that it is obvious that it is better for the Democrats to keep the government shut down. Vin Diesel says Democrats are the program. I don't know what that means. Beth McDaniel says Trump should be in alligator Alcatraz. I mean, yes, but also nobody should, because, nobody should be kept in those inhumane conditions. Malachi Hood says, have you seen about the Supreme Court Rastafari case? I have not seen anything about that. You sir need more coffee says Trump got booed of the Commanders game. That's why we like the Commanders. My family-in-law, they're big Commanders fans, and so I support them. John868 says, why move to California? Okay, so a couple of things about that. Number one, I just learned that the state that has the highest rent instability, meaning that paired with the average median income, which state has the hardest time paying the rent? It's Florida. Right, guys? So yeah, but if you're asking me why I moved to California, it was for my wife's job. And because I'm a traveling stand-up comedian and I do live streaming and content creation, I can do that from anywhere. Joseph says, Israel first or America first? I mean, for the Trump administration, it's Israel, it's Argentina, it's China, it's Russia first before America. Grizzly Bear says, you're whistling through the graveyard. I don't know what that means, Grizzly Bear. And also ask a question or you're going to get booted. Aura Sense says, abortion. What are your thoughts? I'm pro-choice, but even if you're pro-life, you should still vote for the Democratic Party. Excuse me. Because the Republican Party isn't actually doing anything to decrease the number of abortions. All they are doing is making pregnancy more dangerous for women. The Democrats' policies actually do reduce abortions at the same time as they are keeping them free and safe. Fog of War Production says, what would you do about Chinese fishing vessels operating in other countries' sovereign waters? That's a really difficult question, Fog of War Productions. I am not going to claim that I am the global diplomacy, savant that knows exactly how to solve that problem. So I would love for you to accept my apology in punting on that question. Aura Sense says, now I see why you're a comedian. Life begins at conception. Okay, Aura Sense. Do you recognize that abortion bans don't actually decrease the number of abortions, but actually just make abortion more dangerous for women? You're so concerned about life begins at conception, but what about the women who have died because of these abortion bans? What about children that get shot at school? Like, do those count at all? Those are lives also, not just fetuses, right? Kimberlina says, do you think there will be any issue with CR in the House? Or will only Marjorie Taylor Greene might change the vote? No, I'm pretty sure that the Republican Party has enough votes to make it pass in the House. I'm pretty confident of that, but I'm not 100% sure. El Toro, good to see you again, says, was Angela Walker a good progressive choice for Bangor City Council? I don't know enough about her, so sorry about that. Kelly says, can the generals that have been fired get together and arrest Trump for war crimes due to the votes? I don't believe so. I don't believe that they have that kind of jurisdiction. Sacramental Enjoyer says, do you think either a MAGA candidate or a paleo-conservative president will ever get us out of NATO or the UN? I think if anybody's going to do it, it's going to be MAGA. Like, I don't think that they view international cooperation as a positive for America. Fidget Newton says, what about food and medical care for children? I am for food and medical care for children. Elijah says, Trump's new 50 years mortgage. Yeah, for real, man. Aura Sense just says year. So I'm not really sure what that means, Aura Sense. I think it's possible that some of your comments got deleted by TikTok. So maybe you need to rephrase that in a way that the TikTok gods would not see. JT says, were you just in Fort Collins? You probably meant were. And no, I was not, JT. Mike Green says, what do you think about Mamdani not accepting a meeting with Kevin O'Leary? I don't know who Kevin O'Leary is. Is he Mr. Wonderful, the fucking Shark Tank guy? Andrew says, do you think this will further hurt Trump and Republicans' approval ratings? No. I think if anything, ending the government shutdown, I think that's what you're referring to, right, Andrew? I think ending the government shutdown is probably going to be agnostic against probably going to be benign against the Republican Party. I think the Democratic Party might take a little bit of a hit because we're already seeing this ascendant narrative about, oh, they're caving, they're weak, they're snatching defeat from the jaws of victory, bullshit, 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 of course, but that's the way that propaganda narratives work. Triska says yes, Shark Tank Super Trumper. Yeah, fuck Kevin O'Leary, fuck him, and fucking kudos to Mamdani for not taking a meeting with him. Maybe just take a meeting with him so that you can fucking fart and then leave the room. WV State Citizen says, what happened in 1871? I do not know. Orison says, who said I was pro Second Amendment? Also, women dying from abortion. How about the 20 million babies dying? So again, Orison, we don't agree on whether or not a fetus is a baby. So only you of the two of us believe that abortion is killing a baby. But it doesn't matter whether or not you are a right-wing person or a left-wing person or a Christian or a non-Christian. Children who are alive and at school and get shot by guns, like those are very real deaths. Women who wanted to have children and then had medical complications that required an abortion, but then they weren't able to get that medical care because of abortion bans in their states, and then those women just died. Like, those are deaths that we can agree, like, those are human deaths. And only one political party is letting those kinds of deaths happen. So again, if you want to decrease the number of abortions, there are things that you and I can do to make that happen. But the Republican Party making it illegal or banning it doesn't actually do that. It just makes pregnancy more dangerous for women. QN says, name who died. Okay. Let's see here. Who are the women who have died because of abortion bans in red states? See how easy this is, QN? Let's see here. Okay. Alrighty. Okay, let's see here. Jocelyn Barnica, Yennefer Alvarez Glick, Portia Umezi, I think is how you pronounce her name, Nevia Crane, Amber Nicole Thurman, Candy Miller, Tasha Sabeski. Yeah, that's what we got so far, QN. Error Abraham says, just make up names they won't fact check. Well, it was an easy thing for me to do, to give that a quick Google. Alrighty, Ecuadorian baseball pitcher says, crazy. I was crazy once. They locked me in a rubber room with rats, and there's crazy. I feel like that's a reference to something. All right, Tot says, some of them bled out in the parking lot of the hospital. That is accurate. Rando says, what issue do you think divides the left and the right most? Honestly, Rando, I think it's culture war shit. I think that Republican Party politicians and Republican thought leaders like Ben Shapiro and Alex Jones and Tim Pool, like, they are the ones pushing this culture war about, like, trans people and fucking what else is on the, and fucking Sydney Sweeney's jeans ads and shit like that. Because if we all got together and recognized that the Republican Party was letting the billionaire class fuck us all over, then it would be game over for the Republican Party and the billionaire class. So they have to focus on these culture wars, Not showing my pretty face. Great to see you again. Says, can you talk about what's happening with reopening the government? Sure. Short version is that a handful of Democrats are open to a specific compromise that does not do the Affordable Care Act subsidies that the Democratic Party originally claimed as the reason for the shutdown, or as the reason for not funding the government, but does do some other things to try to alleviate the suffering of American citizens, funding programs, and keeping federal workers from getting fired, not canceling 20% of flights going out of airports, stuff like that. Of course, the predominant narrative, not showing my pretty face, is that this is evidence that the Democrats caved and are weak, and I do not believe that is accurate at all. Sacramental Enjoyer says, have you seen the U.S. Conference of Catholics Bishops statement denouncing ICE? Really good stuff. Yeah, the Catholic Church, the Pope, they don't do everything right, obviously, but standing up against the America's far right extremists, they're fucking nailing it. Rando says, so regarding billionaires, do you think there should be a cap on how much they make? So Rando, hold on a second. Don't Say Straight says, billionaire class, y'all wouldn't have a party if not for billionaire Soros. That is not true. Don't Say Straight. Do you think that billionaires should be able to pour unlimited amounts of money into our elections? Don't Say Straight. Answer me that. Rando, should there be a cap on how much people make? I'm not 100% sure what restrictions we should be putting on how much people can make. What I will tell you is that income inequality is worse now than it was during the Gilded Age. And income inequality is terrible for America. Income inequality is even bad for rich people. Rich people are not trying to avoid the damage that will come to them because of rampant income inequality. They are trying to become so rich that they can then use that money to keep those consequences from getting to them. So how do we solve that problem? I'm not 100% sure, but my gut is telling me tax the wealthy until they are no longer billionaires, increase the minimum wage, strengthen unions. There's a whole bunch of other things that we can do without making it illegal to make a certain money a year or something like that. We have to be really specific when we're talking about policies to rein in the excesses of the wealthy and try to make it so that fewer Americans are starving to death on the streets. But generally speaking, painting with a wide brush, the rich have too much, the poor don't have enough, and we should do something about that. Kitchy Noodle just joined, says, how are you defending the weak, useless Democrats? I'm not defending them at all. I just think that we should all have the humility of recognizing that this is a complicated issue, and just because it seems obvious to us does not mean that the answer is obvious. Just because we might have a preference in a complicated, issue does not mean that our preference is the correct one. You, sir, need more coffee says, do you think senators, representatives should make minimum wage of those who they represent? Yeah, I think that's dope as hell. Sacramento says, do you support Bernie's plan to have universal health care while allowing private like Canada? Yeah, absolutely. I got no problem with that whatsoever. Kitchy Noodle says, how is it complicated? Excellent question, Kitchy Noodle. It's complicated because the Republican Party does not give a shit if Americans get hurt. So keeping the government shut down isn't necessarily hurting them. It's hurting Republicans' constituencies, but then the Republicans are just going out and saying, well, you're hurting because of the Democratic Party and further entrenching their base. There's no real downside to the government being shut down for the Republican Party. So, the Democrats don't really have any leverage here. Whereas the Republicans have a lot of leverage, where they are increasing the suffering of American citizens during the shutdown because Democrats actually give a shit about their constituents suffering. Then, as the Republican Party is making their suffering worse, then they are feeling the pressure to reopen the government. So that's number one. Number two is that we are working our way into the holiday season where fewer flights and people not getting paychecks and stores potentially being empty is going to exponentially increase the suffering of American citizens and would potentially lead to, violence on the street. And we want to avoid that because if there is violence on the streets, then Donald Trump sends in ICE, sends in the National Guard, sends in the Marines. He further entrenches martial law over America, potentially canceling elections. Like, it is easier for Donald Trump to continue escalating if things go in a violent direction than not. So they're trying to avoid that as well. Additionally, not every Democrat voted for this. So, maybe you have an issue with the specific Democrats that are potentially going to vote to reopen the government. But your issue is not with their Democratic Party en masse, because I think it's like 75% of the Democrats are still refusing to sign on to the CR. Right. Eru says the airline industry paid them off. I don't believe that that's true, Eru. Let's see here. Kitschy Noodle says polls show that Republicans were getting more and more blame. The snap conflict made it clearer. Yes, Kitschy Noodle, that is accurate. But there is the election to inflict electoral pain on Republican politicians is over a year away. Is like a year away, basically. And so, do you think the Democratic Party should just have let Americans suffer for that entire year? Do you think that the negative feelings that Americans have around the Democratic Party is going to around the Republican Party is going to be maintained for a full year, knowing how easy it is for Americans to forget the shit that the Republican Party does? You know, in 2024, Americans were completely forgot about all the shit that happened in 2020 under the Trump administration with COVID fucking running rampant, January 6th, installing a bunch of Supreme Court justices that got rid of Roe versus Wade, which caused the deaths of women. You know, our collective memory for who is to blame for the problems with our country is extremely short. You know, America is basically Guy Pearce in Memento. And so, yeah, it wasn't a slam dunk. It's not a slam dunk either way. Alrighty, let's see here. John Selfridge, good to see you again over on YouTube. Again, we're talking. Everybody on my live stream is proving my point today. You know, even my regulars. You know, and I love you guys, and so I'm not throwing shade or anything, but John Selfridge says, "What do you think about the Democrats capitulating on the shutdown?" Which is, again, a false narrative, because it wasn't all the Democrats that are agreeing for a compromise, and I would not describe it as capitulating. I would describe it as those Democrats making what they think is the better choice in a really difficult situation. Triskafon says, "We are disappointed, Jared." Hey, I'm not gonna lie, I'm disappointed too. But I try to have humility to remember that just because I think that what Chuck Schumer and a handful of Democrats did was the wrong thing to do does not necessarily mean that it was the wrong thing to do. All right, let's see here. Not showing my pretty faces is hard because every other political activist I follow is mad at Dems right now. It's all we see. So, not showing my pretty face. I think some of that is organic and some of that is inorganic. I think some of that is the algorithm will fucking love you if you shit on the Democratic Party. The algorithm will love you if you go out there and say, these people are terrible, these people are not terrible, blah, blah, blah. I think that some people, they are potentially getting paid to take unnecessary dumps on the Democratic Party. It's just, we have this idea that has been drilled into us by propagandists that no matter what the Democratic Party does, it is the wrong thing to do. And so, yeah, I get it. And if you want to be frustrated with the Democratic Party, if you want to primary any of those people that voted for, the government to reopen, or you want to, try to get Chuck Schumer unseated as Senate leader, fucking be my guest, man. I am for all of that. It is just this narrative that this is further example of the weakness and the frailty of the Democratic Party. We're getting pushed around, always let themselves get pushed around. It's like, I completely disagree with that as the answer. Right, Rando says there is genuinely no middle ground anymore, which is a major problem. I mean, there is, Rando, but the Republican Party politicians refuse to compromise at all. They have, for a long time, they have started playing this game of brinksmanship with the Democratic Party, and because they don't have a problem with their constituents suffering, they win. Like, if you don't care if you die and your car gets totaled, you will win every game of chicken. Voodoo Witch says, what do you think the Dems caved? Think Schumer gotta go? Everybody's saying it. Everybody's saying the Democrats caved, guys. Everybody's saying it. God damn, man. It is just like how deep the fucking the fucking brainwashing is in all of us. And again, a lot of you guys are my regulars, and so I'm not trying to throw any shade at you guys, but like recognize how easy we are making things for the Republican Party by taking potentially good faith votes is being interpreted as the entire Democratic Party is worthless. You know what I mean? It's like, God damn, man. Like, let's not be part of that problem, Asher says, speaking of brainwashing, have you tried Ground News? Yeah, I like Ground News. That is one of my, what do you call it? That is one of my go-to news sources, news aggregators. All right. Valerie says, well, the Republicans got a mandate in November. You mean in 2024? I don't think they did get a mandate, Valerie C. And my argument for that is that more people did not vote than voted for Republicans. And so I don't think that means that you get a mandate. Alrighty. Magaversiverse says, and they are suffering badly from audience capture with their base Fox News. That is accurate. Candy Conmos says, that attitude about Dems from Dems got Trump elected again. I kind of think I know what you mean, and I kind of think I agree with you, Candy, so I don't know. Kitschy Noodle says, just because we think establishment Dems are useless doesn't mean some aren't good. I would go further than that, though, Kitschy Noodle, and I think that just because a handful of Democrats do things that we don't like doesn't mean that most Democrats aren't good. I think that the majority of politicians in the Democratic Party are good and worthwhile. And thank you to everybody who helped me reach my gift goal today. I really appreciate that, guys. We are almost at an hour, so I'm not going to start another gift goal just now. But thank you. Thank you for that. I hear that helps me in the algorithm. Valerie says, I used to be a Democrat, but the party has gone too far to the left. Valerie, have you read Deciding to Win? Because they talk about that a lot in that report, Valerie C. Are you still here, Valerie C? Let me know. Let me know if you will check out Deciding to Win. I think it's really interesting. Okay. No, I haven't. So what's interesting about that study, Valerie C., is that the authors of that study generally agree with you, that the American public believes the Democratic Party has gone too far to the left. But the policies that people associate with the Democratic Party that equal too far to the left are all policies that the Democratic Party has not adopted. Like, they're not in their platform at all. So what I think is really interesting about Deciding to Leave is that it shows exactly which things have stuck in the American people's brains, where they blame the Democrats for doing things, even the ones that they're not doing, and not giving them credit for the things that they are doing that they like. Does that make sense, Valerie? So Americans believe erroneously that the Democratic Party has gone too far to the left because they believe that a basket of policies that are not their policies are their policies. And when asked in the same study what they wish the Democratic Party was doing, it was things like raising the minimum wage and protecting social safety net programs like Medicare, Medicaid, and welfare, which are the things that the Democrats are doing. So what that study shows is really interesting. It doesn't show that the Democratic Party has gone too far to the left. It shows that the American people believe the Democrats have gone too far to the left because they believe lies about them. And they don't get credit for the good things that they have done or tried to do. Valerie C. Valerie C says, well, I'm a Christian and the Democrats are flat out disregarding God. I don't believe that at all, Valerie C. And in fact, I would make the argument that the Democratic Party is the only Christian party out there, the only Christ-like party out there, because their policies are about feeding the hungry, clothing the poor, housing the homeless, et cetera, et cetera. All right, Carmine says, honestly, I think you're just going mama bear defending all the Dems. I want to know what you think about that handful and what we should look forward to. So Carmine, my opinion, I'm definitely not, mama bearing. But the thing is like, I predicted this. Like, I knew this was going to happen. I knew that no matter what Democrats did, they were going to get yelled at, and it was going to be interpreted as the bad thing. So that's number one, Carmine. And I love you, Carmine, so I'm not, no tea, no shade. But what do I think about Chuck Schumer? What do I think about the Democrats that voted to reopen the government? They gotta fucking go. All of them gotta go. Primary the fuck out of them. organize the campaign to remove Chuck Schumer as leader. Like, that's how I feel. You know, I think that we all need the humility to recognize that just because that might be our opinion does not necessarily mean that is the right move, though. If I was God King of America, then 100% I would be removing those people from the party, primarying them, better progressives, shit like that. But, the way that we immediately go from, accurately yelling at the Republican Party for the shit that they are doing, and then taking just like the smallest little thing that a handful of Democrats do, and then making that the number one thing that we need to do. We need to rake these Democrats over the coals. And we might as well just lump the entire Democratic Party in there, even though it's only a handful of Democrats in the Senate that are responsible for this. Yeah, I think that we really need to recognize how easy it is for social media and the mainstream media to push us to not giving Democrats any credits and giving them blame for things that are not their fault. You know what I mean? Alrighty. Rando says, just like that, question mark? Is that a second question? Because I'm not really sure what that means. Duran says, I think since 2020 shutdown, we get information different, truth surrounded by misinformation. I say that is accurate. Ecuadorian baseball player says, how can one throw shade if they don't have sunglasses on? Agreed. So Ecuadorian, you have a longer question there that I will get to in just a second. Alrighty, let's see here. Parapa says, I think we need to make a machine that allows others feel empathy, because Republicans just don't. So I think the way that we get people to have sympathy, Parapa, is education. I think we need to get people reading fiction, and having a general understanding of history, and how our government works. I think education solves that problem. But though that is a long-term solution to an immediate problem, unfortunately. Papa says, didn't work, we educated them, and they still clung to the Bible. So I actually disagree with that, Papa, because the Republican Party has been defunding public education for a long time. And if they have not been in power nationally, they've done it locally. And so they have created their own base of support by defunding education, and creating an impossible barrier to advancing in society. Like it is so difficult for somebody to not be thrust into poverty in America as it stands today, and that redounds to the benefit of the Republican Party. But that's what they want. They want people to be desperate. Ready. Scrolling up. Not showing my pretty face says, so you don't think they should have voted to reopen the government? Yes, that is my personal belief. I don't think they should have. I don't think it was the smart move. But I am also privileged enough to not be one of the Americans that is acutely suffering from the government shutdown. So it is really easy for me in a blue state to say, keep the fucking government shut down, teach these Republicans a fucking lesson. Maybe we'll fucking get through to the American people what the Republican Party is like, blah, blah, blah. But I'm not flying. I haven't needed to take a flight in a really long time. And that, I'm sure, is changing a lot of people's calculus on this. Air Abraham says, but Schumer voted no. Yes, but people are saying that Schumer orchestrated the specific Democrats that voted yes, because it was very calculatedly all Democrats that are not up for re-election. So, yes. Let's see here. Fog War Productions says, I kind of agree with Valerie that I think that the Democratic Party is overly secular culturally. Oh, that's interesting, Fog War Productions. Yeah, I mean, if the culture of the base, of the voting base of the Democratic Party is more agnostic, overly secular, does that mean that the Democratic Party is? I don't think that that's what that means. What I'm seeing here in both Valerie and Fog War Productions is, again, part of the bias against the Democratic Party, in that because their supporters tend to be less religious, They believe that the party is less religious. But I think that if you polled all of the elected Democrats in office, you would find, maybe not 100%, religious, but maybe not as religious as the Republican Party, but still, I would say maybe like 90%, something like that. Maybe 90% Christian. I don't know. Let's see here. Valerie C says, I don't see that when they encourage abortion and transgenderism. So, Valerie, the Democratic Party isn't encouraging abortion and is not encouraging transgenderism. The Democratic Party is allowing abortion and transgenderism, but the Democratic Party isn't advocating for those things. The Democratic Party isn't going up to women who are pregnant and saying, but have you thought about getting an abortion? I think an abortion might be the move for you. And they're not going up to men and women being like, you should change sexes, even if you don't think you should. We would love it if you did. Does that make sense, Valerie? You still here? Ready. Fletch Lives Again says, what were the reasons that the 8 gave? So I haven't dug into that, Fletch Lives Again. I'll have that for you tomorrow if you remind me via a DM. But yeah, I think that if you look at the logistics around the government shutdown, if you look at how the Republican Party does not give a shit about American suffering and have actually been trying to increase American suffering during the government shutdown, I don't think that it's difficult to recognize how an empathetic leader might be trying to end the shutdown, if only just to protect their constituents. Ready. Parapa says, also, why would America choose someone else, like a new party? It's really difficult for a new party to get, popular enough federally to actually be competitive. And most third parties aren't even trying. The Working Families Party is the only one that I see even trying a little bit. Okay. All right. Rando says, we all believe in something, whether it's God, etc. I believe it's Jesus, which carries over to politics. All right. Well, you're allowed to do that. Slick says, the Democrats' way, break it, then look for billions to fix it. First, the banks, college, now healthcare. The Democrats' way, break it. Yeah, Slick, that's not a good sentence, and also the things you're saying are inaccurate. Oreo says, what do you think will happen to healthcare snap in the new year as a result of the BBB? I think Americans are going to be suffering. I think Americans are going to be suffering from skyrocketing healthcare costs. And I think it's interesting, and I think an argument could be made that it was probably a pretty savvy move that the government funding bill that these 8 Democrats have agreed to only lasts until January. And so at the exact same time as the healthcare subsidies that are going to increase everybody's healthcare costs start coming into effect is when we're going to have another shutdown fight. So maybe this was savvy. Maybe it was a savvy thing that the Democratic Party did. I don't know. Misty Lane says, guys, inequality isn't a side effect of capitalism. That is accurate. It's good to see you again, Misty. Jay Bork. I don't know if that's how you mean to say your name, but boy, oh boy, do I like it. Jay Bork. How can the Democratic candidate in 28 actually communicate that they will make things more affordable? So, Jay Bork, it's a really good question. The first thing that I would say about that is that we need to recognize that all of our information systems, be it mainstream media, right-wing media, or social media, are all weighted to assist with spreading the kind of narratives that help the Republican Party. And so even if Democrats had a perfect messaging strategy for 28, then it would potentially get drowned out by all of the bots and the trolls and the paid content creators, etc. And so if the Democrats do have a message of affordability that they want to get out there, we have to help them. Jay Bork. So that's number one. Number two is, I think they need to say, we see you. We see that this is happening. And here is our plan for fixing it. We're going to tax the rich, and we're going to use that money to alleviate the financial burdens that you are all suffering under right now. We are going to break up the monopolies that have allowed these rampant price increases to happen. We are going to fix the supply chains that have decreased supply and increased demand. We're going to decrease the deficit, which will hopefully bring down interest rates and bring inflation back down to a reasonable number. That's just like a handful of policies that I could just like think of off the top of my head that would do it. Nurse D says, are they going to cut Medicaid for Low Income and Affordable Care Act or just the Affordable Care Act? So the big beautiful bill does make massive cuts to Medicare and Medicaid. But the big beautiful bill didn't cut the Affordable Care Act. It just did not extend subsidies for the Affordable Care Act. I'm pretty sure that's what we're looking at here. Nurse D, does that answer your question? Fogwar Productions says, I think the Democratic Party could easily sway non-evangelical Christians right now. I mean, from your lips to God's ears, Fogwar Production. But again, we got to remember that the information environment is toxic to the Democratic Party. Carmine says, so Schumer offered those other Dems as a tribute. Also, you're my North Star brother, nothing but love. Excellent. I'm happy to hear that. Well, I think that Chuck Schumer is making the calculus that when those Democrats are up for re-election, that Americans will have potentially forgiven them for those votes that they took. You sort of need more coffee says Israel was still getting funded under a shutdown, but our military was not getting paid. You sort of need more coffee. I'm pretty sure the military was getting paid. Actually, I think that there was some bobbing and weaving that the government did to get the military paid. I could be wrong about that, but I just remember reading that article. You know. Okay, Fogwar Production says the Mormons are in place since a MAGA lunatic massacred and burned one of our congregations in MI. I cannot remember which M state MI is. I want to say Missouri or Mississippi or something. No, Missouri is MO, so I guess that'd be Mississippi. I don't know. Fogwar Productions. What I have seen is a right-wing base that is willing to forgive almost anything from the Republican Party, and so I hope that you're right. I just I'll believe it when I see it. MS is Mississippi. MI is Michigan. Thank you. I'm an idiot. Everybody. All right, everybody. We're at an hour and 10. I went long today just because I really think that these questions are just dope as hell. You guys are really, I think we're really talking about things that are important to talk about on the live stream today. You know what I mean? Carmine says, okay, but work on those abbreviations. I'll do my best. Have you seen Gary Goldman's bit about that, Carmine? I fucking love that bit. That's hilarious. Jack says, what are your thoughts on our tax dollars going to Israel? So I don't have any problem with American tax dollars being used to assist in, international issues. Israel specifically, I am against sending money and weapons to Israel because the government of Israel is guilty of doing war crimes against the people of Palestine. And we already have a law on our books called the Leahy Law, Jack, that means that if a government is guilty of atrocities, then we are not legally allowed to offer them any kind of assistance. We're not even allowed to sell them weapons, I don't even think. Ready. Let's see here. Joe says, I can't believe the cultists don't believe the cult is bad. It's very funny. Well, we're not throwing any shade around here. User Need More Coffee says, my son is in the Navy and he wasn't getting paid. Have you seen the lines of service members for food banks? No, I mean, then you definitely know more about it than I do. User Need More Coffee. But I just thought I remembered reading that they had found a way to continue paying the military. But again, like I said, if your son is in the Navy and you're getting it from the horse's mouth, then I believe it. Rando, I appreciate you being here in good faith, my guy. I get a lot of people on the right who just want to come in here and call me a cuck, especially if they do not have a profile picture. But you're welcome back anytime if you ever want to have good faith discussions about politics. CS says, I thought they had a private donor to pay the military. I mean, that guy gave them, I think, like 1/3 of one day's pay's worth. I think he gave like $100 million or something, which is basically nothing. Dylan Jammy says, how do you tax the rich more with all the loopholes they have? You close the loopholes, Dylan Jammies. I just saw there's somebody who messages me sometime, whose profile name is anonymous, which obviously we are probably dealing with somebody who's not here in good faith, Dylan. And the video he sent me was basically just that argument, which was that you cannot increase taxes on the rich because these loopholes exist for the rich to get out of paying taxes. And I was like, well, that's kind of bullshit. That argument's kind of bullshit because there's no law that says that those have to be the tax rules. Like we can change the tax code to make it so that rich people cannot avoid paying taxes. Okay, Jack says, sum up the end of the shutdown. Why has it ended? So the shutdown hasn't actually ended. And depending on how the rest of the Democrats in the Senate play this, even if they have an agreement, even if those 8 Democrats have an agreement with the Republican Party, we're still talking about like next week as the official end of the shutdown. It's possible that Democrats in the Senate allow a vote on this to take place earlier, but if people like Bernie Sanders want to play hardball, the earliest they could open it is next week. So the shorthand version of the shutdown is that a small group of Democratic senators have negotiated a potential end to the government shutdown. What Democrats got out of that was the spending bill will only last until January. They are guaranteed a vote on extending the Affordable Care Act subsidies. They are the firings and the defunding that the Trump administration is currently doing to government employees will stop. I believe that that's what they got out of the deal, in addition to ending the suffering of Americans, through the government shutdown. Jack says, why would the Democrats in office not want to open it early? What's their game plan? So I think that some Democrats, and I kind of agree with this as a strategy. I think some Democrats believe that the American people want to see them fighting against the Republican Party because of all the things the Republican Party is currently up to, like the rampant criminality and corruption and just like barbarity that we are seeing. The analogies you could make to what the Trump administration is doing and what was going on in Germany in the 1930s are not small, and it is not a coincidence. And so I think that they view that as being more valuable than whatever political gains that they would get from reopening the government. I think that they see the pain of Americans living through the government shutdown as being essentially the same as the pain that they would feel if the government wasn't shut down, because of all of the ways that Trump is mistreating people and bending the rule of law to his will. Particularly, we're gonna start seeing a lot more Americans suffering in January when everybody's healthcare costs explode because the Affordable Care Act subsidies have not been extended. And so for Democrats that are on that side of the fence, and again, I would consider myself one of them, we need to direct America's attention to who is causing this suffering. And I think the shutdown is doing a really good job of doing that. Some Democrats, they don't. And I think that we also need to recognize this. And this is especially a message for anybody out there that wants to say, Dems caved, this is them being weak, et cetera, et cetera. I am not a person who is suffering from the government shutdown. And so it is really easy for me to sit in my apartment in California and go, yeah, if I can keep the government shut down, that's maybe we'll finally get it into their fucking thick skulls that the Republican Party is full of shit. But if you are a Democratic voter and you are living in a state where you are much more feeling the pain of the shutdown, if you are somebody who travels a lot and you're worried about, how safe plane travel is with a bunch of underpaid and overstressed out air traffic controllers, with, flight delays and cancellations being rampant because these air traffic controllers are resigning en masse, like maybe you are feeling it is much more urgent to open the government, even if you believe that what the Democrats are doing in refusing to fund the government is the right thing to do, Ready. CS says, we just had a blue wave. The voters were blaming Republicans. Yes, that is accurate, CS. But who Americans blame for the shutdown is not the only thing to consider here. the actual suffering of the American people going into the holiday season, that's something to consider as well. And not for political reasons, just because the Democratic Party does not like to see people suffer. That's just part of our whole fucking thing. Gigi says, but isn't there still the possibility that these 8 could change their votes? Yes, 100%. We are all arguing about a thing that has not happened yet. So yeah, it is 100% possible. I think it is unlikely, because I believe that the Democrats in question have the kind of integrity where if they say they're on board with something, they usually don't change their minds, or just like pull the rug out from other people. J4 says, do you think Trump was serious about ending the filibuster? Oh, 100%. Ending the filibuster would give him more power, because the Republicans that are not on board with Donald Trump, but that go along with him because they're scared of him, they love having the filibuster as an excuse to not enact all of the batshit crazy things that Donald Trump wants to enact. Without the filibuster, they would only need 50 votes to make voter ID laws the law of the land, banning abortion in all 50 states, insert crazy ass fucking Trump MAGA policy here, insert fucking Project 2025 agenda here, and Donald Trump could get it done a lot easier than he can with the filibuster in existence. Kimberlina says, would love to see those 5 be the same ones to end the filibuster when Dems are in power by Trump. Yeah, fucking, that'll be their Severus Snape, return to good graces after all this fucking shit. Chase says, do you think Democrats destroyed this recent election because of more and more people hating on Trump? I think there's a lot of things that went into the Democrats doing well in this past election. Special elections are usually seen as a referendum on the party in charge. When Biden was elected in 2020, there were elections in 2021 that tended to skew a little bit more conservative. Virginia lost their Democratic governor, for example. I think that the shutdown, prices continuing to go up, all of the problems that Trump said he was going to solve in his first term not getting solved, I think there's a lot. I think there's a lot that went into how well Democrats did in last week. Okay, CS says, do you think the Dems have a good shot on the December 2nd election in Tennessee? I haven't looked into that one. I mean, it is Tennessee, of course, but I don't know. I don't know what the polling looks like. I don't know what who their current representative is or was. How safe of a seat was it? I have no idea. You sir need more coffee says, my son is in the Navy and he wasn't getting paid. Have you seen? Oh, you already did that one. You sir need coffee. Chase says, appreciate the great answer and this awesome convo I get to listen to. Thank you, Chase. Let's see here. CS says the current Republican, or was it the current rep, resigned for probably a cabinet position is what I'm guessing. CS, current representative in Tennessee, resigned for the private sector. Oh, interesting. Yeah. Tennessee has seen a lot of Illinois migration. I think there's a shot. Yeah. I mean, we have seen there was a massive blue shift in the last week. We've seen kind of a massive blue shift in elections since since Donald Trump was reelected in November. Yeah, there have been a ton of special elections that were up for grabs. A couple of red districts, I think, that switched blue. A couple of red seats that switched blue. Not just last week, but over the past couple of months, I think. I can't remember all of them specifically. Alrighty, Chase says, have any general thoughts on the job market? I'm about to struggle, LOL. Chase, I don't know what to tell you, man. I don't think there's any good news coming out of there anytime soon. I think that Trump has made a bunch of decisions to completely fuck over the working class of Americans, in addition, and at the exact same time as we are experiencing an artificial intelligence revolution that is slashing the number of available jobs out there. And so, this is exactly why we need things like universal health care and universal basic income, because we cannot guarantee that there will be enough jobs for Americans going forward. And the people that are in charge don't give a shit. The people in charge right now of the government, the Republican Party, Donald Trump, his fucking billionaire buddies, they don't give a shit if everybody that isn't them fucking starves to death because they can't find a job. So yeah, man. Ugh. Yeah, it's rough out there, my guy. I would say, Chase, don't be proud. Use every connection you have. If you just try to go through like the regular ass job market, putting out your resume and shit like that, I don't have a lot of hope for anybody who's doing that. I would say use your connections, talk to people, don't be afraid to use nepotism if you have to, because it's fucking rough out there, my guy. It is fucking rough out there. Ooh, ready. Zay Miruka, good to see you again. Says, what is your opinion on Mamdani winning? I'm glad it happened. I think it is a good indicator, and I think it is going to be great for New York. Okay. Caruso says, will Johnson insist that Adelita not vote to release the files in return for the Affordable Care Act subsidies? I think it's much more likely, Caruso, that he just not sit her until after the Tennessee election, where he could potentially cancel out her vote. So, then there would be no discharge petition at all. Ready. All right, everybody. You're welcome for the long episode today, but we had some really great questions. You guys fucking nailed it. As for your half of this, just asking questions, you guys fucking nailed it. Regular streaming schedule is Monday through Friday, starting around 11:30 a.m. Pacific time. If you want to support the show financially, you don't have to, but you can if you want to. I know we're all struggling, but the mechanisms are available to you. You can join the Patreon for as little as $1 a month. Shout out to my patrons, Robert, Carmine, Shannon, and Patrick. You can also buy things from my store that I have on my website. Links are in the bio. And also you can send gifts on TikTok and Twitch and YouTube, and you become like super subscribers and shit like that. I have just recently become monetized on Twitch, so I'm getting a little bit of money from somebody gave me an Amazon sub or something. Like if you got Amazon, you can like sub to my channel. It doesn't cost you anything, but I get like $2 for everybody that does that or something. And yeah, this should be ad revenue or something, but I don't know if I'm actually getting that or anything. I gotta look into that. So yeah, and you can be like a super fan on TikTok, I think, as well. But again, you don't have to do any of this crap. Let's see here. If there are any questions that you guys have that I was not able to get to on this live stream, or you think of other things that you want to talk to somebody about or ask questions about, then I hope that you do. I hope that you will reach out. My DMs are open. You can email me through my website. You can get in touch with me via my Discord. I want to be a resource for you guys to be better informed and better involved in politics. So if I can help you in that goal, I want you to use me. Use me and abuse me. Use me until I am all used up. The Discord is one of my favorite resources right now because not only does it give you access to other people, other like-minded individuals. You can get in touch with me that way, but also there's recommendations there for books and podcasts, and also great organizations for you to volunteer for or donate to. And we need as many people doing the work as we can. So please get out there and do the work. It is only us doing the work that's going to get us out of this. The work is working. We saw that on Tuesday. The work is working. So get out there and do the work and recruit other people to do the work as well. Alrighty, let's see here. Any final questions to get to? Lassie says, what do you think of the situation in Palestine in general? I mean, it's a quagmire. It's horrible. Like, everybody is suffering in that region. And obviously the people in Israel are suffering less because they have much more money and weapons. They are much better protected than the people in Palestine. But goddamn, like, everybody is suffering in that region. It's really, really terrible. And yeah, I don't think that we should not be supporting the Israeli government in what they're trying to do to the people of Palestine. And obviously we should not be supporting Hamas because they're a terrorist organization. And, the Trump administration is just doing, letting Netanyahu do whatever the fuck he wants, Ready. It says, do you think the U.S. having a two-party system is why it's so corrupt? I don't. I think that there are some real limitations and issues with the two-party system, Nas, but I don't think that we can put the corruption on that specifically. Citizens United, the influence of billionaires, ending the fairness doctrine, right-wing media, social media propaganda. Like, I think all of those are way more intimately involved in corruption in American government than just the two-party system structure the way that it is. So yeah, cryptocurrency, just the existence of cryptocurrency, I think, is much more of a greater corrupting influence on our government than the two-party system has been. Right. Israel Franco says, can Schumer be voted out right now? That is a really good question, Israel Franco. I think um, if they wanted to have another leadership vote, I don't know if they have the power to do that because they don't have the majority in the Senate. I could be wrong about that. So yeah, I'm not really sure what other mechanisms they would use to force that vote. It might be like an inner party thing where they just kind of agree next time they do a Gang of Eight thing that there's going to be another vote. I'm not sure. I'll look into that though. If you remind me, if you send me a DM, I'll look into it. Lassie says, so you wouldn't speak of G side? Oh no, it's a G side. It's 100% a G side. Lassie, 100%. I am not trying to argue that what Israel is doing is not a G side. There have been plenty of independent organizations, even those existing within Israel, that have found that it is a G side. Nah, it says true, but in the UK we have a lot more democracy, in my opinion, because third parties are more powerful. Yeah, I'm not against having ranked choice voting and opening up our political system to multiple parties, but the way that the American system stands right now is third parties could only ever be spoiler candidates. All right, everybody. Thank you again for being here. The work continues, everybody. So get out there and do the work. Be good to each other. Be good to yourselves. Self-care is part of the work. Don't forget. And I will see you guys tomorrow. Same bad time, same bad channel. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.